You said that you get inspired by a certain is that how does that work? So if somebody gives you a word or something, how does that influence the choices you make?
Well, so I mean, I because this is fresh enough, I can do a little play by play
Yeah.
of the thought process. So you know, you said the word robust, so instantly my first thought was big, fat, meaty chord to start out. You know, something with more than four notes at least for sure in both the hands combined. Um, so and then robust, maybe that brings to mind French overture, something with a very like strong affect to it. And then you mentioned French overture, then a fugue comes to mind afterward. Um, maybe beyond that, it becomes much more subconscious. But those are some of the things that spring to mind when I first get a little burst of inspiration.
Yeah, I asked Professor Canzano Nico, I asked him like that's the big question, the thought process, because really it makes me wonder how far ahead are you thinking in the present moment as you're playing. So are you just like, let me get through this sequence and then I'm at a certain juncture, then I decide then what I'm going to do? Because you clearly have a lot of ammunition, so to speak, before you can go in different directions. But how far do you think ahead if you were making choices?
So there's I would say there's two different tiers of thought. So on the one hand, there's the large structural thought of, okay, if I'm doing a French overture thing, I know that there's this dotted section, there's a fugue that's coming after, and maybe that's set up by either a tonic or a dominant chord. I don't necessarily decide that right at the beginning, but I know that once I've gone through enough of these little paths, those are the two goals in front of me. And depending on where I end up, one of those will make more sense to me.
Right, right.
So that's the like the background tier that's going on. The more like minute or second by second, phrase by phrase sort of tier, usually um I have in mind like whatever, a 2 bar phrase, a 4 bar phrase, something that is on its like neutral form is a symmetrical number that then I can, manipulate and twist and cut or expand as I want. But yeah, basically, I'm thinking in a very like um, even numbered sort of phrases to, let's say if I start in B flat, then okay, there's going to be a B flat major chord that's coming in 2 bars, or it's going to be an F major chord or some other chord that from the key that I start in, it's not it you don't have to think so hard to figure out what comes next,
Now
right?
let's talk about phrases. Sorry to cut you off, Nathan. I just wanted to ask you. You mentioned phrases. What
Yeah.
constitutes a phrase in your mind? How long is it? What are the elements that in you? Is it like super long? Is it a small unit? What's a phrase to you?
Oh, I mean that's a widely variable question. But, in the course of improvising, it's often determined by tempo. Actually, tempo is probably a big one because if it's a very fast piece, I'm thinking in, let's say 4 bar phrases or 8 bar phrases. And the harmonic rhythm, like how much the harmonies themselves actually change per bar, also determines
Hmm.
that. Right? So if I'm doing something that is a slow piece, an adagio, a largo, something, and maybe there's anywhere from 2 to 4 harmony changes per bar, maybe I'm only thinking in terms of like a 2 bar phrase.
Hmm.
Um, but it's greatly variable. I don't have
Right.
a one size fits all answer for that
Now I have
question.
a little bit more detail in that question. So when you do you make the phrase up on the spot, and do you like say I'm in this particular chord and so I'm going to choose some notes from the chord. I'm gonna maybe decide, it would be nice to decorate one of the chord tones. I might add a passing note. Like, how do you generate the phrase? Like, what's your idea? I mean, that's a very broad question, but like, let's just take an example of a phrase. Like, you're in B flat, so like,
Yeah.
Did you, I mean, do you take it from literature? I mean, and then you say, I have this idea and then I'm going to manipulate it to make it my own? Or on the spot, do you just say, I'm going to take, I have a chord in mind or like a direction I want to take?
I mean, there are various, stock and conventional choices
Oh,
that I've encountered in music, I've encountered in repertoire, I've, accumulated in practice sessions where on one level, it's basically like even if I'm coming up with it on the spot, I've seen this scenario before or I've seen that scenario.
right.
So in one level, it's a part of my brain that's just like activate this sequence
Yeah.
now.
Yeah.
Or,
Path A,
it's
path B. Yeah. Yeah.
right. So I mean, in one sense, I think any good improviser has probably, you know, truly never done something for the first time when they actually do it in front of an audience.
I know what
A
you
lot of
mean. Yeah.
times
I know what you mean. You're
in a
treading so you're treading old ground that you've practiced, but you are in this moment kind of mixing them up though, units, right?
for sure. I mean,
Yeah.
in a lot of ways, the actual like spontaneity comes from you deciding what to put where and when, not necessarily the like
I'm
that
going to
that what you
reinvent
come
the
up with
wheel.
is
I'm going to reinvent the
right.
wheel
No, no, no. You
every single time.
right. Like I would say from my personal experience, like that feeling of actually feeling like I come up with something new happens, I don't know, once every 20, once every 40 improvisations. Like normally it's, I'm going to do something like I've done before, but it'll be in a different key, or it'll
Mhm.
be, it's this sequence, but I'll try this figuration over it now.
Yeah. I think
Um,
honestly, I think you're being quite modest in terms of fresh, but like, but I mean, I get your point. I understand what you're saying. Yeah.